All right, let's dive into a book that's been making some serious waves in the personal finance world. I'm talking about The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. And even the title itself is pretty intriguing, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to accelerate their path to wealth? But before we get swept away by, those Lamborghini dreams, let's take a closer look at why this book is generating so much
Right.
buzz.
Yeah, the title definitely grabs your attention, and it really reflects the core message, which is creating wealth rapidly. DeMarco, he's challenging that traditional get-rich-slow approach that we hear so much about, the one that says invest in your 401k, save diligently, and wait patiently for decades. He's advocating for a much more active approach, one that's built around entrepreneurship and creating systems that generate wealth actively. It's kind of like, shifting from being a passenger in your financial journey to actually becoming the driver.
I like that. That's a really good analogy. And it's definitely a refreshing perspective to hear, especially since most financial advice out there seems to be all about slow and steady investments. But DeMarco, he actually achieved millionaire status by 31 and retired at 37, all by, defying that conventional wisdom. So what was his secret sauce? What set him apart?
Well, he didn't win the lottery or inherit a fortune, that's for sure. DeMarco, he built a successful limousine company from the ground up. And that's actually where his whole perspective on wealth creation really starts to take shape. He saw firsthand how a business, when structured strategically, can generate substantial wealth in a relatively short amount of time.
So it's not about getting lucky or just waiting for some distant retirement. It's about taking control and building something that actually generates wealth now.
Exactly. And DeMarco argues that relying on traditional investments and hoping to get rich slowly, it's kind of like a risky gamble, especially considering, our limited lifespans. You might end up being the richest person in the retirement home, but is that really living the life you envisioned?
It's a sobering thought, and I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of sacrificing their present for a future that may or may not live up to expectations. Now, DeMarco, he refers to these different approaches to wealth creation as financial roadmaps. He outlines three of them: the sidewalk, the slow lane, and of course, the fast lane. So let's paint a picture here. What does it actually look like to be on each of these roads?
All right, so picture the sidewalk as the path of least resistance. It's all about instant gratification, racking up debt, and really just relying heavily on external support. People on this path, they're often lured in by those get-rich-quick schemes, hoping for a shortcut to wealth without actually putting in the real work.
Okay, so sidewalk dwellers are more focused on appearances than actually building real wealth. It's like they're trying to skip ahead without understanding the steps involved. What about the slow lane? This is probably where most people find themselves, right?
Yeah, most likely. The slow lane, it's definitely the more responsible path compared to the sidewalk, but it's still anchored by that traditional approach to wealth. Jobs, slow and steady accumulation through investments, and just kind of hoping to enjoy the fruits of your labor way off in the distant future. But DeMarco argues that even though it seems safer, it still relies heavily on factors that are outside your control, like the stock market, the stability of your job, things like that.
So it's like you're playing by the rules, but you're still at the mercy of external forces. But then there's the fast lane, and the fast lane is all about creating your own rules, right? What makes this approach so fundamentally different?
The fast lane, it's all about entrepreneurship. It's about building businesses that solve problems, that generate passive income streams, and it ultimately allows you to control your own financial destiny. It's about creating value, not just trading your time for money.
So it's about building assets that work for you, even when you're not actively working. But isn't there some element of, luck involved in any entrepreneurial success story?
DeMarco addresses that head on. He doesn't deny the role of luck, but he argues that it's often a byproduct of process and action. By putting yourself out there, taking calculated risks, and building systems, you're essentially increasing your chances of encountering those lucky breaks. He actually used the example of Mark Cuban. Cuban, he didn't just stumble into wealth. His success is the result of tireless effort, strategic decisions, and, yeah, maybe a bit of luck along the way, but he actually created the conditions for that luck to find him.
That's a great point. It's not about sitting back and hoping for the best. It's about creating opportunities and being ready to seize them when they arise. Now, DeMarco is pretty critical of traditional jobs. He calls them a trade of freedom for money. That's a pretty bold statement. Why does he feel so strongly about that?
He argues that jobs, by their very nature, limit your control over your income and your time. You're basically trading your most valuable asset, your time, for a fixed return. And even if you climb the corporate ladder, you're still limited by someone else's rules, someone else's vision.
So it's about recognizing those inherent limitations of a job and understanding that true financial freedom, it requires breaking free from those constraints. But I mean, isn't there some value in the stability and security that a job provides? A lot of people find fulfillment and purpose in their careers.
DeMarco, he acknowledges that some people thrive in those traditional job settings, and that stability can be valuable. But he argues that true wealth, it's about having choices. It's about the freedom to pursue your passions, to spend your time as you see fit, and to create the life you envision without being, limited by financial constraints. He believes that entrepreneurship offers a greater potential for achieving that level of freedom and control over your life.
That makes sense. It's about defining wealth on your own terms, not just accepting that traditional definition of a steady paycheck and a 401k. DeMarco, he even challenges that conventional idea that wealth equals happiness by introducing this concept of the wealth trinity. Can you explain what he means by that?
So he argues that true wealth is about more than just money. It's about achieving a balance in three key areas: strong familial relationships, good health and fitness, and freedom. Material possessions, they become truly meaningful when they're acquired through freedom, not through debt or, financial strain. He actually shares a story about how after achieving financial success, he was able to buy a Lexus for his brother without hesitation. It was a simple gesture, but it really represented true wealth to him because it was born out of freedom and generosity, not out of this need to impress or keep up appearances.
That's a powerful illustration of the difference between just having money and having true wealth. It's about using your resources to actually enhance your life and the lives of those you care about, not just about accumulating stuff for the sake of, appearances.
And this actually brings us to the dangers of what DeMarco calls lifestyle servitude.
Lifestyle servitude.
Yeah, it's that trap of elevating your lifestyle through debt to create this illusion of wealth. You buy that fancy car, the bigger house, all on credit. And suddenly you're trapped in this cycle of working just to maintain that facade, instead of pursuing your true goals. DeMarco actually experienced this firsthand. After he got a high-paying job, he bought a sports car, thinking he had made it, only to realize that it became a burden. It was preventing him from pursuing his entrepreneurial dreams.
So it's a reminder to detach our self-worth from those material possessions and focus on building true wealth, which is about freedom, choice, and the ability to live life on our own terms. Now, speaking of living life on our own terms, DeMarco has a pretty unconventional view of the traditional 9-to-5 job. I mean, he doesn't sugarcoat it.
No,
Really.
not at all. Yeah, he sees jobs as kind of a trade-off.
Hmm.
You exchange your time, your energy, your freedom for a paycheck. And he argues that that exchange, it inherently limits your earning potential and your ability to control your time.
So it's about recognizing those limitations and understanding that true financial freedom requires breaking free from those constraints. But isn't there some value, though, in the stability and security that a job provides? I mean, a lot of people find fulfillment and purpose in their careers.
Yeah, and DeMarco, he acknowledges that. He says that some people, they really thrive in those traditional job settings. And that stability, it can be valuable for sure. But he argues that true wealth, it's really about having choices. It's about the freedom to pursue your passions, to spend your time as you see fit, to create the life you envision without being limited by, financial constraints. He believes that entrepreneurship, it just offers a much greater potential for achieving that level of freedom and control over your life.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about defining wealth on your own terms, not just accepting that traditional definition of a steady paycheck and a 401k. Now, DeMarco even challenges that conventional idea that wealth equals happiness by introducing this concept of the wealth trinity. Can you break that down for us? What does he mean by that?
So he argues that true wealth is not just about money. It's about achieving balance in three key areas. And those areas are strong familial relationships, good health and fitness, and freedom. Material possessions, they only become truly meaningful, he says, when they're acquired through freedom, not through debt or, financial strain. And even shares this really interesting story about how after achieving financial success, he was able to buy a Lexus for his brother without even hesitating. And for him, it was just a simple gesture, but it represented true wealth because it was born out of freedom and generosity, not out of this need to impress or keep up with the Joneses.
That's a really powerful illustration of the difference between simply having money and having true wealth. It's about using your resources to enhance your life and the lives of the people you care about, not just accumulating possessions for the sake of appearances.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to what DeMarco calls lifestyle servitude.
Lifestyle servitude.
Yeah, it's this trap, right? It's the trap of elevating your lifestyle through debt to try and create this illusion of wealth. You buy that fancy car, that bigger house, all on credit. And then all of a sudden, you're trapped in this cycle of just working to maintain that facade instead of actually pursuing your true goals.
Yeah.
And DeMarco, he actually experienced this firsthand. After getting a high-paying job, he bought a sports car thinking he had made it, only to realize that it just became this huge burden. It was preventing him from going after those entrepreneurial dreams that he had.
So it's a reminder to detach our self-worth from those material possessions and focus on building that true wealth, the kind that's about freedom, choice, and the ability to live life on your own terms. And speaking of living life on our own terms, DeMarco has some pretty strong opinions, let's say, about the traditional 9-to-5 job.
Oh, yeah. He definitely doesn't hold back. He sees jobs as this kind of like trade-off,
Yeah.
You're exchanging your time, your energy, and your freedom for a paycheck. And he argues that this exchange, it inherently limits your earning potential and your ability to control your time.
He even outlines what he calls the 5 suckages of a job. Can you walk us through those?
Okay, so number one, he talks about the limitations of gaining experience just through a job. He argues that specialized knowledge that you might gain in a specific role can become obsolete pretty quickly. And then he points out that, in a job, you have limited control over your income and your career progression. You're kind of subject to the whims of your superiors, the changing dynamics of the corporate world. And then, of course, you've got office politics, those inevitable power struggles and interpersonal dynamics that can just drain your energy and distract you from your goals. And of course, he emphasizes the pay yourself last reality of being an employee, where, your income is taxed and it goes to bills and expenses before you even have a chance to save or invest for your future.
He's painting a pretty bleak picture of the corporate world.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's coming at it from this perspective of, promoting entrepreneurship in the fast lane. He even shares this anecdote about attending a job fair after college. And it was at that job fair that he realized the corporate world wasn't going to fulfill his aspirations. He saw it as kind of a dead-end road that was leading to just mediocrity.
So if jobs are the problem, what's the fast lane solution?
Well, DeMarco introduces what he calls the fast lane wealth equation. And it's pretty simple. Wealth equals net profit plus asset value. And this equation, it highlights the importance of creating businesses that generate profit and appreciating assets. And he emphasizes something called controllable unlimited leverage, meaning that, unlike in jobs, businesses allow you to manipulate variables like profit margins and asset value to really accelerate wealth creation.
So it's about having more control over those levers of your financial destiny. And this is where those intriguing money tree seedlings come into play, right? Can you expand on that concept a little bit?
Absolutely. Money tree seedlings, it's his term for business systems that generate passive income. These are ventures that can continue to generate revenue even when you're not actively working.
It's the dream, isn't it? Making money while you sleep. So what are some examples of these money tree seedlings?
One example that a lot of people are familiar with is rental systems like real estate. DeMarco, for example, owns rental properties that generate income with very minimal time investment from him.
Right, that's the classic passive income model. What other seedlings does he talk about?
Well, he gets into the power of computer and software systems, highlighting how software can scale and generate income with, again, very little time investment once it's up and running. And he draws on his personal experience with his website business to illustrate that.
So it's about leveraging technology to create systems that essentially run themselves.
Right, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even touched on content systems, distribution systems, or human resource systems.
Well, I'm all ears. Let's dig into these money tree seedlings a little bit deeper and discover those various paths to creating that passive income. But first, I think we need to address the elephant in the room here. Not everyone can just become an entrepreneur overnight. So what about those of us who are currently, stuck in the slow lane, working jobs, maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by this whole fast lane concept? What advice does DeMarco have for them?
Yeah, that's a really valid point. And DeMarco, he acknowledges that transitioning to the fast lane, it's not a one-size-fits-all process. It requires a change in mindset for sure, a willingness to take risks, and a dedication to building something of your own. But it's not about quitting your job tomorrow and just jumping headfirst into the unknown. It's more about starting small, exploring your options, and gradually shifting your focus from trading time for money to building assets that generate that passive income.
So it's more about evolution than revolution.
Exactly. Even while working a job, you can start planting those money tree seedlings. You can explore different business models, acquire new skills. You can gradually build your fast lane vehicle in your spare time.
Now, you mentioned that we haven't even touched on all the types of money tree seedlings. I'm particularly intrigued by those that leverage, knowledge and creativity. What can you tell us about content and distribution systems?
Well, DeMarco himself, he's a prime example of someone who has successfully utilized content systems. His book, The Millionaire Fastlane, it's a money tree seedling in itself. He's taken his knowledge, his experience, and packaged it into a product that people are willing to pay for. And it generates income even when he's not actively writing.
So it's about turning your expertise into an asset that can generate income. What are some other examples of content systems?
Absolutely. Think about online courses, ebooks, membership sites, podcasts even, and blogs that generate income through advertising or affiliate marketing. Those are all ways to leverage your knowledge and creativity to create passive income streams.
And what about distribution systems? I'm having a little trouble visualizing what that looks like.
Distribution systems are all about connecting products and services to the right audience. Think about platforms like Amazon, Etsy, or even your local farmers market. They provide a way for creators and producers to reach a wider audience and generate sales.
So it's about finding those effective ways to get your product or service in front of the people who are most likely to want to buy it.
Precisely. And the cool thing about distribution systems is that they can be applied to both physical and digital products.
That's fascinating. So we have rental systems, computer software systems, content systems, and distribution systems. What about that last one you mentioned, human resource systems? That one sounds a bit more complex.
Human resource systems are about building a team that contributes to your business growth, but doing it in a way that minimizes your own time investment. And that usually involves automation and efficient processes. So it's about leveraging the power of, human capital without getting bogged down in the day-to-day operations yourself.
So it's about building a business that can run smoothly, even when you're not there micromanaging every little detail.
Exactly. But building any successful business, whether it's based on, rental properties or software or content, it requires careful planning and execution. And DeMarco actually provides a framework for that with his 5 Fastlane commandments.
Ah, yes. Those commandments have been kind of, teasing us throughout this whole conversation. Let's finally dive into those and see how they can help guide us on our journey to the fast lane.
Okay, so the first commandment is the commandment of need. And it emphasizes the importance of solving a problem or fulfilling a need in the marketplace. It's about creating something that people actually want and are willing to pay for, not just chasing some fleeting trend or building a business around, your own personal interests that maybe nobody else shares.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where your passions and your skills and the market demand, they all intersect.
Exactly. And then you've got the commandment of entry. This one stresses the importance of choosing a business that has barriers to entry and some differentiation from the competition. It's about finding a niche. There's something unique that sets you apart from the crowd. You don't want to just jump into a saturated market where everyone's already doing the same thing.
Right. So it's about finding a way to stand out, to offer something that your competitors don't, to really create a unique value proposition. What's the next commandment?
The next one is the commandment of control. And this highlights the need to actually own and control your business, not be a cog in someone else's machine. You're the driver, not the passenger. It's about having the freedom to make decisions, chart your own course, and then reap the rewards of your efforts.
I can see how this ties back to DeMarco's whole critique of those traditional jobs. It's about taking ownership of your financial destiny and building something that you have control over. What's the fourth commandment?
Okay, so the commandment of scale. This one emphasizes the need for a business model that can reach a large audience to really generate significant wealth. It's about creating something that has the potential to impact a huge number of people, not just, a small localized market.
So it's about scalability, the ability to grow your business exponentially without being limited by geography or physical constraints.
Exactly. And then finally, we have the commandment of time. And this one stresses the importance of building a business that generates income without requiring you to constantly be investing your time. It's about creating those passive income streams that free you from the constraints of trading time for money and allow you to achieve true financial freedom.
These commandments are so insightful. It's like a checklist for evaluating potential business ideas and making sure they align with that whole fast lane philosophy. But, ideas are worthless without execution. What does DeMarco say about moving from the planning phase to the doing phase?
He's adamant that execution is key. You can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you don't take action, it's just going to remain a dream. And he really encourages his readers to, overcome that procrastination, that fear of failure, that perfectionism, and just get started. Learn by doing.
I think that's a common challenge for a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs. You get caught up in the planning and the analyzing, afraid to take that first step, afraid to make mistakes.
Right. But like we were discussing earlier, failure, it's part of the process. It's how we learn. DeMarco even shares this story about redesigning his website and receiving a flood of complaints. And it was a humbling experience for him, but it taught him the importance of feedback and iteration. Even when you think you've created something amazing, you need to be open to feedback and willing to adjust course based on what your customers are telling you.
So it's about being adaptable, responsive, and constantly seeking ways to improve.
Exactly, and it's also about managing expectations. DeMarco, he emphasizes the importance of making sure that your customers understand what they can realistically expect from your product or service. That helps prevent disappointment and builds trust.
Transparency and clear communication are key. But even with the best intentions, there will be times when things don't go as planned. So how does DeMarco suggest we handle, customer complaints?
He stresses the importance of responding to complaints with grace and professionalism, explaining your position clearly and then moving on. He advocates for picking your battles, focusing your energy on those complaints that are truly valuable and can help you improve your business.
So it's about prioritizing those issues that have the potential to make a real impact and letting go of those that are just noise. Now, another aspect of this whole Fastlane journey that I think can be challenging is building a strong team. You mentioned DeMarco's own experiences with unreliable business partners.
Oh, yeah. He definitely learned some tough lessons about the importance of carefully vetting potential partners and employees. Making sure that they share your values, your work ethic, your commitment to excellence. It's about surrounding yourself with people who are going to elevate you, not drag you down. It's about being really selective, doing your due diligence and trusting your gut when it comes to choosing the people you're going to be working with.
Absolutely. And then it's about building that culture of trust and open communication within your team.
Right. And DeMarco, he emphasizes the importance of empowering your employees, giving them the autonomy to make decisions and take ownership of their work.
That makes sense. When people feel valued and trusted, they're more likely to be engaged and productive. And that leads to a more successful and fulfilling work environment for everyone involved.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked a lot about those practical aspects of building a Fastlane business, but DeMarco, he also stresses the importance of what he calls the internal game, the mindset and beliefs that actually drive our actions.
Right. It's not just about those external strategies. It's also about that internal work that we do on ourselves.
Exactly. And he talks about the importance of identifying and then deodorizing what he calls those flatulent headwinds, those negative influences, the doubters, the distractions, those limiting beliefs that can really hold us back.
It's about recognizing those things that are draining our energy, hindering our progress, and then taking steps to eliminate them from our environment.
Yeah. And he also stresses the importance of making conscious choices that align with your Fastlane aspirations. He talks about the power of the butterfly effect, the idea that even small choices can have this ripple effect, creating these huge changes over time.
So it's about being mindful of our decisions, knowing that they have consequences that extend way beyond just the present moment.
Right. And he encourages readers to really make choices that empower their goals and avoid those treasonous choices, as he calls them, that can derail their progress.
It's about aligning our actions with our aspirations, making sure that our day-to-day choices are actually leading us towards the life that we want to create.
Exactly. And along those lines, he also talks about the importance of finding mentors, coaches, and peers who will challenge you, support you, and inspire you to reach your full potential.
So it's about building a network of people who believe in you and who will help you achieve those goals.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about time. DeMarco actually dedicates a significant portion of the Millionaire Fastlane to this concept of time as the ultimate currency.
He argues that time is the great equalizer, right?
Exactly. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, but it's how we choose to use that time that really determines our outcomes.
And he's really critical of that traditional notion of paying yourself first, arguing that it's almost impossible in a typical job where you're constantly exchanging time for money.
Right. You end up paying everyone else for the government, your landlord, your creditors, and then whatever's left over, that's for you.
It feels like we're always playing catch up, never quite getting ahead.
In DeMarco, he calls this the 5-for-2 trap.
5 for 2.
Yeah, 5 days of work for 2 days of freedom.
Right.
And he encourages readers to break free from this cycle by building businesses that generate income, even when they're not actively working.
So passive income is really the key to escaping that 5 for 2 trap.
Exactly. And it's not just about earning more money. It's about reclaiming your time, your freedom, and your life.
That really resonates with me.
Yeah, and we often hear about the importance of investing our money, right? But DeMarco, he argues that investing our time is even more crucial.
It's about making those conscious choices about how we spend our time each day.
Right. Are we investing it in activities that are actually going to lead us towards our goals, or are we just squandering it on distractions and time wasters?
That's a really powerful question to ask ourselves.
It is. And it kind of ties back to that whole concept of mindset that we were discussing earlier. Our beliefs, our attitudes, our thoughts, they all influence how we perceive and utilize our time.
Absolutely.
And DeMarco encourages readers to adopt a proactive approach to time management.
So it's about being intentional, setting priorities, and making sure that our actions are aligned with our goals.
Exactly. It's about taking control of our schedules and not letting time control us.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the fundamental principles of the fast lane to those practical strategies for building a successful business. But I think it's important to emphasize that this whole journey to the fast lane, it's not just about achieving financial freedom.
Right. It's about so much more than that. It's about creating a life of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment.
It's about using our talents and our resources to make a positive impact on the world.
It's about building strong relationships, pursuing our passions, and living a life that's truly aligned with our values.
It's about creating a legacy that extends beyond ourselves. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to DeMarco's personal story. His journey from being a broke limousine driver to becoming this millionaire entrepreneur, it's a really powerful reminder that the fast lane is achievable.
It's not just some fantasy. It's a reality.
It really is. It's a testament to the power of hard work, determination, and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
But it's also a reminder that the journey isn't always going to be easy. There will be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt. But DeMarco's story shows us that it's possible to overcome those obstacles and achieve some pretty extraordinary results.
Yeah, and he encourages readers to embrace failure as a learning opportunity.
To view those setbacks as stepping stones on the path to success.
To never give up on their dreams.
Exactly. So as we leave our listeners today, I want to challenge each of you to think about your own fast lane journey. What is your open road?
What steps can you take today to start moving towards that vision?
What limiting beliefs are holding you back?
What choices can you make to reclaim your time and invest it in your future?
Remember, the fast lane is not a destination. It's a journey. It's a way of thinking, a way of living, a way of creating the life that you desire. And it all starts with a single step.
That's right.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Millionaire Fastlane. We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and empowering.
We did too.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing towards your dreams.